He is the face of Wyandotte County, but for how much longer? Mayor Mark Holland fighting for re-election. He takes on his opponent next. Plus, we dissect the rest of the week's local headlines in our Reporter Roundtable.
Week in Review is made possible through the generous support of Dave and Jamie Cummings, Smithfield Foods, Haas and Wilkerson Insurance, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Nick Haynes. A little sore voice this week, but feeling very enthusiastic and energized about our program. Our countdown to Election Day continues this half hour. While most of the media focus has been on the airport vote, there are some very significant decisions to be made around our metro for the last 4 years. This man has been the face and the voice of Kansas City, Kansas and Wyandotte County. But does Mark Holland deserve another 4 years in the mayor's office? David Alvey says no. A little over a week from now, he hopes voters will give him a chance to lead. He leads in two ways now: on the board of directors of the Board of Public Utilities in Wyandotte County and as an assistant principal at Rockhurst High School. But Mayor Holland, there are huge headaches when you are the mayor of a county, lots of late nights. Why do you want to continue doing this job for another 4 years?
Well, just the opportunity to come on Nick Haynes' show at KCPT.
That is a major benefit,
and
yes.
I just want to give you a shout out for your nice new backdrop that represents Kansas City, Kansas, so thank you for that. No, it is a headache, but it's public service. And if you look at how many opportunities do you have to serve as the mayor of your hometown? I'm fourth generation Wyandotte County, third generation pastor, and our city is a great place to live and raise a family, and I want to continue to improve it.
What is Mayor Holland doing so terribly wrong, David Alvey, that you felt so compelled to sacrifice leaving your family, basically, for this campaign to run for office as mayor?
Well, clearly, obviously, I don't feel that Mark Holland deserves another 4 years, but of course, that's up to the voters in Wyandotte County. I would suggest that this election is a referendum on Mark Holland's leadership. I feel like too many neighborhoods, too many small businesses, too many taxpayers feel neglected, they feel left out, they feel alienated. Our folks support the economic growth that has happened in the county. We appreciate the hard work that Wyandotte Economic Development Council and Greg Kendall have done to bring in economic development. But we have to feel that development in our neighborhoods. We need to see and feel more happening in our neighborhoods.
Was there one specific issue that broke the camel's back for you?
No, I would not say that. I would say there's been a series of issues in my experience on the BPU which led me to this decision. Okay,
so David Alvey says that people are feeling alienated. When you first ran for mayor, one of the big issues was there's a lot of growth in the western part of Wyandotte County. We've seen all of those attractions and all of the retail that's come there, and a lot of that, what is happening on the eastern part of the county and in Kansas City, Kansas. That was a concern when you first ran. How have you addressed that since you've become mayor?
No, that's a great question. I mean, the issue of making sure that folks in the eastern part of our city can see, touch, and feel the success that we've had out west is a primary issue, and we've been moving that. Obviously, Indian Springs, doing public engagement with Indian Springs. The market wants to build a truck stop. We don't want a truck stop. We want something that's going to be beneficial for the community. So we've engaged the community in that dialogue. The Healthy Campus downtown, $40 million capital investment, a new community center run by the Y, a new grocery store, to stimulate housing downtown. That'll be the largest development in downtown in 40 years. We're in property acquisition right now. We'll break ground in the spring for that development. Same thing in Rosedale, doing a master plan in Rosedale, engaging the neighbors. In each case, I don't think it's top down where the government just needs to say, oh, here's what's going to be best for your community. But in every case, whether it's the Northeast Master Plan we're doing now, Rosedale Master Plan, the K32 Master Plan, Indian Springs, we've brought people together in public forums to say, what do you want to do so we can implement these plans?
But when you ran for office the first time, you said Indian Springs was a big priority, and yet it is basically been leveled, it's demolished, and it isn't a plan currently, is it?
It's the best it's looked in 20 years.
Okay.
Not to be there. No, Indian Springs has been a challenge because the market wants industry. It wants manufacturing, which is fine with us on our interstates. The challenge is Indian Springs is such an emotional center for our community. We want housing there. We want retail there. So in order to get that, we're going to have to do what we've done with the Downtown Healthy Campus. We're going to have to change the market. And that's a challenging piece. But without the feedback from the folks, if we just brought together an industrial development, which we could have done 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It would not have met the community's needs.
That is Mayor Holland's plan. What would you be doing differently, David Alvey? You've said that people feel alienated. How are you making people feel included if you were the mayor of Wyandotte County?
So I think the most important thing we have to do is to engage all the stakeholders, all parts of the city, in serious conversations about the serious problems facing our community. You know, I think that the biggest problem facing Wyandotte County is we have $500 million in deferred maintenance in unified government buildings and facilities alone. We have to find solutions to how do we repair the 15 of our 18 fire stations that do not even meet city code? How do we address the 40% increase in violent crime that has occurred since Mayor Holland became mayor? So I think what we have to do is, in all these problems, engage people honestly, seriously, and let them know this is the real situation facing Wyandotte County. We need to let people know about that so they can look at it head on, straight on, and come up with some honest solutions about what we're going to do to move forward.
Now, before Mayor Holland was the mayor, he was on the Board of Commissioners. What has been your experience, though, that would give people a feeling of assurance that you would be able to lead the county and be able to solve the problems that you outlined?
Thank you for that question, because my experience on the Board of Public Utilities, when I came on the Board of Public Utilities 8 years ago, there was a swirl of controversy. We had a special master appointed by Mayor Reardon. We had a legislative audit. There was, you could say malfeasance. There was mismanagement. People did not believe in the Board of Public Utilities could fulfill its mission. So when I got on the board, there were 19 days cash on hand. We were in a terrible fiscal situation. Our infrastructure was outdated. It had to be renovated. We had to build new substations. We had to repair old ones. We had to replace overhead transmission lines. We were facing very serious problems to fulfill our mission of providing reliable power and safe water. And at the same time, the Environmental Protection Agency was coming down with very serious, very heavy mandates for environmental compliance, which required us to expend vast sums of money that came right out of ratepayers. Unfortunately, I fought a lot of those environmental regulations, not because I'm opposed to clean air and pure water. That would be, stupid. It's because I knew the burden it would place on our ratepayers, and I tried to protect them. So we have led the BPU to a place where we have met our environmental regulations. We're providing reliable power, and our rates are competitive across the metro area.
David Alvey says some people in Wyandotte County feel alienated. We also saw this week Mark Holland, about 80 to 100 firefighters forming a circle in front of City Hall with signs that read, "The city is burning us. Are you next?"
Yeah, that's political theater. I mean, the fire department, great men and women put their lives on the line for our community every day, and we owe them a debt of gratitude. We have looked, when I came in, we've got to confront the financial challenges of the city. The city's taxes are too high, our utilities are too high, and the cost centers are police, fire, and sheriff, 60% of our budget for those three, which we just need to make sure we're spending it right. I'm unwilling to do blunt force and just increase taxes double digits like my opponent did with the utility rates, increasing electricity 42% and water 35%. We have to control costs at the unified government. So I've done studies for each of the three major departments, and the fire study came back, and we've been working it for 2 years, and we have invested in life safety first. 10 new fire trucks out of 22 at $750,000 each. We've added 16 ambulances. All our ambulance fleet is new. A new fire station in Piper to fill a vacancy and coverage there. But we also have to look at the reality that the fire study showed, which is we pay double per citizen on fire coverage that the folks in Olathe and Independence, Missouri pay. How does a community with the lowest values and the highest taxes afford to pay double for fire service? Well, we have task forces who are working right now to look at how do we maximize safety in our community, which is our top priority, and how do we do it in a sustainable path without double-digit increases in our rates? That's the key.
How would you handle that differently, David Alvey?
So again, we start with bringing in the stakeholders from the beginning. This task force, this group that was put together, did not include firefighters from the beginning. The study that was done, I'm sorry.
That's not
the
true.
firefighters what I've known about the firefighter study was that, first of all, the comparison is apples to oranges. Olathe is a fairly flat city. The study that was done does not take into account the topography, does not take into account the really antiquated infrastructure of our roads. You know, it's hard to navigate a lot of roads. I live in the south part of the city in Old Shawnee Township. Those roads are generally narrow. They are hard to make turns on. You see the buses trying to fight their way around just to pick up kids. So to try and compare ourselves to Olathe doesn't make any sense. We have excellent fire service. There's something that we ought to be proud of, and instead of being proud of it, we're actually going to throw them under the bus. That doesn't make any sense to me. I think as also, if Mayor Holland is suggesting that the BPU should not have taken on the challenges of taking care of the infrastructure or meeting environmental regulations, he was really saying the BPU does not matter to this community. It's better if it just goes its way. Let it collapse, let the infrastructure fall away, let it be in violation of environmental regulations. That's what he's suggesting. If we were not to have met those challenges, the BPU would not be able to serve the needs of Wyandotte County. I intend to take that same approach to the unified government, to look at the problems head on, straight on, face the $500 million in infrastructure that we've got to take care of, and solve those problems.
Last week, Lamont McIntyre, a man from Kansas City, Kansas, was making not just our local headlines here, but national and international headlines, being exonerated after spending decades in prison for a double murder he did not commit. The Kansas City Star says this brings up a lot of serious questions about what is happening in Wyandotte County with the police, relationships with the community, and the criminal justice system there. Does the mayor have a role to play in that?
Absolutely. And in fact, with the uptick in violence that we've seen nationally, that we've seen in Kansas City, Kansas and Kansas City, Missouri as well, I've partnered with our police chief and went out and did 4 public forums with the community to talk about how we can improve police relations. I mean, we've been hit hard by this in Kansas City, Kansas. We've had the tragedy of 2 police officers being killed in the line of duty. And it's the weight that has on our community, on all of us in the unified government has been traumatic, especially for our police officers who are out putting their lives on the line for us every day. I brought the groups together with the police officers and the community to talk about how we could improve things in our community. But what I found out was when we did those forums there, I was one of the younger people there, and we weren't hearing the voice of the youth. So I re-upped with the chief, and Chief Ziegler and I went out and we did 10 additional public forums in each of the schools in Kansas City, Kansas, all 8 high schools and in the community college and Donnelly College, to hear from young folks how can we partner with the police to improve community relations, to make it safer for the police, safer for our community, and how to address this violence. I have a commitment moving forward. I've talked with our district attorney, Mark Dupree, who has committed in the light of this tragedy that we just saw unfold with Lamont McIntyre to put together a group to look at other cases. If there was one case where someone was put away wrongly, were there others? I intend to partner with him, the police chief. We have a great relationship in Kansas City, Kansas, and I think it's going to take all the leaders of Kansas City, Kansas and Wyandotte County coming together to say we're not going to tolerate injustice, and we're going to increase and improve the public safety.
Exchanges like this are about comparing and contrasting. Would your approach be different, David Alvey?
No, I don't think so. I think that, first of all, you allow the district attorney to make those prudential judgments that he is elected to make on behalf of the residents of the city, to say what do I know, what does he know about what needs to be done. Allow him to make those prudential judgments, and then respect those and pursue again equal justice for all.
If you were elected on November 7th, what #1 thing would you expect you'd like to be able to see done in the first 4 years of you being there?
I think the most important thing we would do is face the serious debt problem of the unified government. $500 million in deferred maintenance. We have to come up with a plan for that, because long term that will continue to drain away resources from our community, and we cannot afford that.
And your first priority, if you do get re-elected on November 7th, Mark Holland?
The first priority, obviously, is to implement and carry out the Healthy Campus and make sure downtown sees the kind of improvement that it deserves. We're also going to be implementing the plans that we've been putting together. We're going to execute the fire plan. We're going to execute the police plan. We're going to build a new juvenile center. So we're going to put it all together for the next 4 years.
The two candidates wanting to lead the unified government of Wyandotte County and Kansas City, Kansas for the next 4 years, incumbent Mayor Mark Holland and challenger David Alvey, thank you so much. Next week, we get to grips with the future of KCI in a special hour-long election edition of the program with supporters and opponents of the new single terminal plan. You're watching Week in Review. Now to dissect this week's top local headlines, we're joined by Kraske and Helling. That's Steve Kraske, also known as Mr. Up-to-Date on KCUR-FM. He's also on the editorial board of the Kansas City Star. That's where you'll also find political analyst, columnist, and editorial writer Dave Helling. Missouri Governor Eric Greitens getting lots of attention this week. He was at the Iowa State Fairgrounds, one of the headliners at a Republican fundraising event. The move set off immediate speculation. Is Greitens toying with a run for the White House?
The president has an ambitious tax cut and tax reform plan, and I was proud of the fact that he came to announce that plan in my home state of Missouri. I was proud of the fact that he did that. And there's, like I said, there's some good conservatives in Congress, many of them from right here in Iowa. But I'll tell you this, the people of Missouri and the people of Iowa, we want to see results. We're tired of waiting, and we need D.C. to get it done.
Can a politician enjoy pumpkin carving and barbecue at an Iowa event, though, without journalists jumping to conclusions that they want to be president, Steve?
Not in Iowa, Nick. You go to Iowa before a couple years out of a presidential election, and people are going to talk. Eric Greitens knew that going up to Iowa, and I think he probably did that very intentionally because he very much wants to see his name kicked around when it comes to presidential candidates in 2020 or 2024.
So not necessarily just 2024. It could be 2020, even though that would be a time when President Trump is going to be seeking re-election.
Well, we'll see, Nick. I mean, there is a story that suggests that President Trump might not seek re-election and that Mike Pence might then seek the nomination, and then Eric Greitens could come in as the vice presidential nominee, and that his presence in Iowa is part of that effort. He's young. These things take time. Usually presidential candidates have to run more than once before they win the nomination, particularly among Republicans. His ambition for the White House is crystal clear, and that's why he was in Iowa.
Does, though, this speculation do anything to change, shift, improve, worsen his ability to implement his priorities, though, back home in Jefferson City, Steve?
You know, Nick, I don't think it helps at all when lawmakers see their governor up in Iowa tending to national politics as opposed to tending to local fires back home. That's going to cause people to sort of wrinkle their eyebrows a little bit and wonder what's going on here. Missouri faces a whole host of major issues, including its transportation network and maybe rebuilding I-70 someday. The fact that Governor Greitens is up in Iowa and who knows where else he is, doing other things, paying attention to other personal ambitions perhaps, isn't going to sit well with a lot of people down there.
And just so we're clear, ambitions like that can distort your own decision making. I mean, we saw that in Kansas when Sam Brownback pushed through tax cuts in 2012 and 2013. A lot of people thought that's because he wanted to run in 2016. If it begins to distort your own decision making in a state, it can be a problem. And I think that's something we have to watch with Eric Greitens.
Very quickly, case in point, the governor might have to raise taxes to pay for highways. That hasn't happened in a long time in Missouri. He may not want to do that, to Dave's point, because he has national political ambitions.
What is the future for the American Jazz Museum? City Hall this week gave $225,000 to help the attraction at 18th and Vine meet its salaries and pay its utility bills through the end of the year. One plan would have the city taking over the Jazz Museum and making it part of the Parks Department. If the problem is a lack of money coming in, how does that solve anything, Dave?
Well, it solves the immediate problem, the money does, of meeting payroll. And then I do think, just as a political matter, Nick, supporters of the museum understood that if you're going to get another $225,000 to cover payroll, you're going to have to promise to do something to try and stop the red ink from bleeding out of the facility. And so that's why they're talking about the Parks Department taking it over. There are some unique circumstances here. This summer festival at the Jazz Museum was a disaster. They lost $450,000. I think we talked about that last week. But there are also systemic problems with the museum which are of long standing and that we all know about. And so I do think that they're taking a close look at governance, in part because of the money that they have to keep shoveling out year over year.
And Steve, beyond being a star of radio, print and television, you are also a huge jazz fan. This must be painful for you to witness.
Well, it is, and I went to that jazz festival this summer. It was spectacular, although it cost us $450,000. I appreciate the city paying that on my
helping
behalf.
your ticket.
Yeah, I think one big question here is moving this museum under the auspices of the City Parks Department. Does that improve its long-term prospects for succeeding and becoming a museum and an attraction that people want to go to and visit? I'm not sure the answer to that is yes here. It's a short-term play, but long-term, does the Parks Department have the creativity and the imagination that's required to boost this museum going forward?
I think Steve's right about that, and I would add this. Running a museum is a very, very, very difficult thing. The Kansas City Science City Museum struggled for years, as we know. The Kansas City Museum, even the World War I Museum before the tax infusion of a couple of decades ago, struggled to get visitors. What the Jazz Museum may need is experts, not necessarily the Parks Department, but someone who is an expert at fundraising, building an endowment, doing all the things that you need to do, getting new exhibits, understanding that you can't spend $500,000 on a festival. All of those things may be important, and that's really what I think we need to watch down at the Jazz Museum.
Is City Hall hurting for cash? This week we learned that council members are debating a measure that would trim how much City Manager Troy Schulte can spend without council approval, when it was the mayor going on a 1,000-item online shopping spree in the last few days to attract the attention of Amazon. Why is it the city manager is the one having his allowance cut, Steve?
Well, I think there's been a lot of concern at City Hall, Nick, over management of the airport debate, the mismanagement of that. Council members really peeved about the way City Manager Schulte navigated all that. You know, and other frustrations as well have boiled over. As you might see, anytime you have a long-serving city manager who has sort of set in his ways and does things by a certain pattern. But it looks today like things have sort of blown over here a little bit. Troy Schulte's not going anywhere, at least in the short term, and the council has sort of backed off this proposition, at least for now. We'll see what happens in the weeks
Because
to come.
he did say, fire me and I can catch up on my sleep, didn't he?
Yes, I mean, it was a stunning thing, extraordinary thing for the manager to say, and does reflect, as Steve suggests, it's not just about his ability to spend money without council approval. It's much deeper. This is a feisty city council, Nick, a feisty city council. And there is a block of members who are angry, not so much at Troy Schulte, but at Sly James. And Sly James and Troy Schulte are very close and work very closely together, and Troy Schulte's allegiance is often seen as more directed to the mayor than it is to the other members of the council. And so they're trying to send him a message, hey, we want to be a part of this too. And I think what he was sort of saying is, hey, you've got to let me do this the way I want to do it. We wrote today and believe that maybe there's a middle ground there where you do a little more outreach to the council, but still have freedom to run the city. It is a city manager form of government.
Is there a danger, though, that we're going to lose the city manager over this spat?
You know, I don't think so right now. And it would be a shame, I think, to see that happen, Nick. You know, Troy Schulte's got a really good reputation in this town as the city enjoys this renaissance, this forward momentum that we've seen on any number of fronts. He's credited with navigating a whole lot of that. And I think it would be a shame to see him go over this.
When the police chief was on our program just a few weeks ago, as we were walking out, he said there was no way Amazon would be thinking about Kansas City when it's on the top 10 most violent list, when it's making its deliberations. That would be part of that thinking. And now the number of murders has hit 119, including the murder this week of a young attorney who was shot to death while sitting on the front porch of his Brookside home. It was one of 3 homicides in 24 hours. Chief Smith is now asking City Hall for more cash to add patrol officers, actually $9 million more for 30 patrol officers and 21 dispatchers to speed up sluggish 911 response times. I saw lots of stories about this, but I never saw any reaction from the mayor or city council who would be responsible for finding that money. Are they not enthusiastic about spending this?
Well, $9 million is a lot of money, Nick. And let's be clear, of that $9.3 million, roughly $7.5 million of it is to give raises to current officers so they can achieve parity with firefighters who got a very lucrative contract. It isn't about the extra officers on the street or extra call takers, which is another part of Chief Smith's proposal. There's always a give and take. There are always ways to cut corners, to find money if you need money. But we should be clear, not only is the police department short of people, but they're going to need cars, radios, equipment. The day of reckoning on police is coming fairly quickly.
But there are fewer police officers on the street today than there was 10 years ago. And doesn't the public expect that we would actually have more law enforcement, not less?
Absolutely, Nick, and Dave is right. What a crunch this is for cities. You just heard Mark Holland and Dave Alvey talk about the fact that in KCK, 60% of all expenditures go to public safety. In Kansas City, Missouri, the number is about 75%. Right. So no wonder Mayor James and the city manager aren't enthusiastic about spending more on police. 3 of every $4 are already going there to begin with. Having said that, yeah, more officers would always be welcome.
And the other thing is they don't control the police department, and so there is some natural friction there as well.
A KU-MU charity basketball game over the weekend revived talk of the border war, but this week also saw revived talk of the business border battle as Missouri Governor Eric Greitens announces Swiss Re plans to relocate its 400 jobs in Overland Park to downtown Kansas City. The move comes after Greitens visited the global headquarters of the firm in Zurich, Switzerland. The tax benefits provided by the Brownback administration weren't sufficient to keep the company in Kansas.
No, it's another chapter in a very, very difficult and concerning story in Kansas City, because the net benefit to our region is virtually nil. There'll be a little bump in earnings taxes, but that will be offset by reduced revenue to the state of Missouri, which is giving the incentives here. It just isn't a good thing for our community. We've written about that.
And that is our Week in Review. Steve and Dave, thank you so much. Next week, the future of KCI is up for debate in a special hour-long edition of Week in Review. I'm Nick Haynes. From all of us here at KCPT, thanks for spending part of your weekend with us.